The political equation in Mount Kenya appears to be changing once again, barely days after former Deputy President Gachagua intensified his efforts to consolidate his political base outside the ruling UDA party. Kiaru MP Ndindi Nyoro has also unveiled his own political vehicle. Nyoro's move has immediately raised questions about the future of Mount Kenya politics and, more importantly, who will command the region's political influence ahead of the 2027 general election. This is the beginning of a new rivalry between Gachagua and Nyoro, or could the two eventually find common ground? For years, Ndindi Nyoro was considered one of the prominent young politicians within President William Ruto's camp. His rise was closely associated with the Kenya Kwanza administration, particularly through his role in parliament and his influence in matters of the economy and national budget. But that political relationship has now changed. Nyoro has left UDA and established the People's Party of Kenya, giving himself a platform from which to negotiate his political future. And that is where the political calculations begin. Because Nyoro is not entering an empty political space. There is already another powerful player trying to occupy that space, Rigathi Gachagua. Gachagua has spent the past months positioning himself as a major opposition figure and building the Democracy for Citizens Party, or majorly known as DCP. His message was largely centered on challenging the Ruto administration while consolidating support in Mount Kenya and reaching out to communities beyond the region. His political argument is straightforward. Mount Kenya needs a stronger voice in the next political arrangement. Now, Nyoro has created another vehicle, and that raises a difficult question. Will Mount Kenya have one political vehicle or several competing centers of power? Nyoro's political profile is different from Gachagua's. He is younger, he has built his reputation around parliament, economics and public policy, and he has previously enjoyed significant support among a section of young politicians. His departure from UDA therefore represents more than simply changing political parties. It gives Nyoro an opportunity to define his own political identity and potentially to negotiate his own place in the 2027 political equation. But there is a question that cannot be ignored. If Nyoro is building his own party while Gachagua is building his own political movement, are they heading towards the same direction? Mount Kenya remains one of Kenya's most politically significant regions, but political support in the region cannot simply be assumed. Voters are not necessarily tied permanently to one leader, and that means both Gachagua and Nyoro have something to prove. Gachagua must demonstrate that his influence extends beyond the popularity he enjoyed while serving as deputy president, while Nyoro, meanwhile, must demonstrate that this political influence can survive outside the Ruto administration. The two men could therefore find themselves competing for the same political space, and if that happens, the biggest question now will be, who has the stronger grassroots network? There is another possibility. The creation of separate political parties does not necessarily mean that Nyoro and Gachagua will eventually become enemies. Kenyan politics is built around coalitions. Politicians can compete today and negotiate tomorrow. And if the opposition eventually agrees to a broader coalition, Nyoro's party could become a bargaining chip at the negotiating table. That could change the story completely. Instead of asking who is fighting whom, we will be asking what does each side bring to the coalition. Gachagua brings experience at the highest level of government and an established opposition profile, while Nyoro brings a younger political identity and a growing network of politicians. Put those two forces together and they could potentially become stronger. Keep them apart and they could end up dividing the same political constituency. And then there is President William Ruto. Nyoro's departure from UDA is significant because he was previously associated with the president's political camp. Gachagua, on the other hand, has already positioned himself firmly against Ruto. That means Nyoro's next political move will be closely watched. Will he openly join the opposition? Will he remain independent, or is he building a platform that will allow him to negotiate with both sides? For now, that remains unclear. But one thing is certain, his political calculations have changed. The biggest test will come as political parties begin forming alliances ahead of 2027. If Gachagua and Nyoro eventually work together, their combined influence could significantly reshape the Mount Kenya political equation. But if they compete separately, the region could find itself with competing political centers, and that could have consequences far beyond Mount Kenya. Because presidential elections in Kenya are ultimately about numbers. The question is not simply who can hold the biggest rally, it is who can convert political support into votes. For now, Ndindi Nyoro has opened a new political chapter. Rigathi Gachagua is already building his own, and both men have political ambitions. Both have networks, and both are positioning themselves ahead of what promises to be one of the Kenya's most competitive elections. But whether this becomes a Gachagua versus Nyoro battle or the beginning of a new political alliance remains to be seen. What is certain is that the political contest for Mount Kenya is no longer a one-man conversation. The mountain has new players, and as 2027 approaches, the biggest question may no longer be who controls Mount Kenya, but who can convince its voters to follow them into the next political era. Ondari Winston, National Art TV.